Counter-terror police in UK are investigating a fire that broke out at Prime Minister Keir Starmer's North London home. Police say they had launched an investigation into a fire that caused damage outside Starmer's former family home.
But we've got more to do, and I'll be honest, because I'm always happy to talk about the things we're getting right, but I'll be honest on this one, I don't think we are going fast enough. And I also know that even once we've rolled out those...
They would later try to explain the night as if it had signalled its arrival, but the truth is more fragile than that. It began with the calm people in cities take for granted. London humming its usual midweek tune, the one made of footsteps crossing wet pavement, buses sighing to a stop and shop windows glowing against the chill. Nothing about that evening seemed prepared to rupture. Even the sky felt indifferent, hanging low and grey in the way it always does before winter settles in. No one could have guessed that a tiny, almost invisible moment would tilt the entire night off its axis. It started with a thread of smoke curling upward near King's Cross, so thin it could have passed for a trick of the street lamps. One man paused long enough to notice, lifted his phone, filmed without thinking much of it, and kept walking. That short, casual recording, half a minute of nothing, became the spark that shot across feeds around the world. People watched it long before they understood what they were witnessing. Then sound cracked through the usual London hum, glass meeting concrete, a muffled thud that blossomed into a brief flare of orange. Someone, nobody saw who, had hurled a bottle. And when it burst, fire crawled outward like a creature waking with a snarl. Heads whipped around, more phones rose, live streams flickered to life. The flames, as if responding to the attention, stretched and snapped and fed on the dry air. Within minutes, the world spoke in the blunt language of hashtags and short captions. London was burning. A police van was the next to catch. Its sirens blinked uselessly from inside a growing cloud of smoke, flashing red and blue like a heartbeat fading under ash. Officers backed away as the crowd surged, swept forward by a chant that seemed to erupt from every direction at once. "Protect our children!" The words came in waves, crashing over the street with an eerie precision, as if hundreds of strangers had suddenly found the same rhythm. Above it all, helicopters carved frantic circles through the sky. The city's usual palette of amber streetlights drowned beneath the deeper glow of fire, painting familiar roads in the bleeding colours of anger and unrest. It felt theatrical, almost scripted, except no one was directing it. Behind the thick walls of number 10, the silence was so heavy it felt staged. Curtains drawn, lights low, aides moving like shadows in a building. Suddenly too small for the fear inside it. No speeches, no statements, just the soft hum of emergency screens casting their cold light on tense faces. When a security official finally murmured that they had lost control of London Bridge, no one dared challenge the words. They didn't describe a location, but a collapse in authority itself. Across the city, neighbourhoods began to splinter. Shoreditch lit up in bursts. Camden crackled with heat. Brixton pulsed with the stomp of thousands moving almost as one. Riot police formed lines that looked steady from afar but shook up close, their shields catching stray sparks. They pushed, fell back, tried again and faltered. Through the smoke, a new chant began to beat through the crowds. Whose nation? A pause, then the roar. Ours, not a plea, not a question, a claim. Traditional broadcasters lagged behind, still trying to assemble coherent segments, while the truth had already spilled raw and unfiltered onto countless live streams. One officer, visor cracked and voice rasping, confessed into someone's shaky phone, "We're no longer in control." The clip ended abruptly, the final words hanging in the digital dark. Shops pulled down metal shutters. Makeshift barricades rose from bins, planks, and whatever else frightened hands could grab. Drones drifted above the capital, capturing scenes that felt unreal even to those living them. Parliament bathed in red light. Narrow alleys flickering with fire, the Thames reflecting a city tearing at its edges. By the time the crowds reached Parliament Square, the ground itself seemed to vibrate. Flares drew red streaks across the night and chants rolled against the stone buildings. Inside, ministers shouted over each other, voices cracking from panic, not conviction. Orders were given, revoked, rewritten. When an aide burst in to report that Trafalgar Square had fallen to protesters, the room froze. The Prime Minister's eyes drifted past the window, unfocused, and he whispered something that wasn't meant to be recorded. God help us all. The unrest seeped beyond London. Birmingham woke to the sound of shouts. Manchester filled with marching feet. Bristol, Leeds, Newcastle, the same pattern repeated, as if the entire country shared one restless pulse. Outside migrant centres, tempers ignited. Police stations barricaded themselves. Helicopters drew restless loops above city centres. One video filmed on a quiet street captured a line of military veterans standing between clashing groups, saying nothing, simply holding their ground. "We served once," an older man murmured. "We'll stand again if we must." The stillness of their line struck millions. The government's next move was to choke the flow of information. The BBC froze on static shots. News channels stalled, certain hashtags quietly stopped refreshing, but silence only sharpened suspicion. People migrated to other platforms, found ways around blocks, shared footage in encrypted corners of the internet. The night refused to be hidden. As power grids flickered, parts of Westminster slipped into shadow, leaving silhouettes pacing behind frosted glass. The Prime Minister appeared on screen hours later, insisting all was stable, but the country had already seen enough chaos to disbelieve every word. The broadcast cut out halfway, not because anyone lost the signal, but because no one cared to continue watching. Then came the moment that would become the symbol of the night. In Parliament Square, amid drifting smoke and the fading echo of sirens, a single police officer stepped forward. His movements were slow, deliberate. He placed his shield on the ground, its edge tapping softly against the stone, and walked away. No speech, no flare of rebellion, just a quiet refusal. Then another officer did the same, and another. Soon an entire row of shields lay abandoned in a neat line, like relics from a battle already surrendered. Inside government corridors, panic thickened. Phones rang unanswered, advisers argued, ministers barked orders no one had the resources to carry out. When armoured military vehicles rolled through London streets, many believed the show of force would restore order. Instead, the crowd grew louder, angrier. The sight of soldiers stirred something deeper, and people who had never marched in their lives found themselves joining the swelling tide. In Brixton, a line of vehicles halted. Young soldiers stepped out, glancing around with uncertainty. Boys barely older than the ones chanting in front of them. For a long moment, they didn't move. They didn't raise weapons. They just stood there, as unsure as everyone else about what role they were meant to play in a nation arguing with itself. But no one, neither officials nor citizens, could pretend the old order remained intact. The night had cracked it open, and the dawn did nothing to hide the fracture.